Matthew 5:39. But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. What in the world did Jesus mean by this? Turn the other cheek. Come on. I mean, whenever I say something like that, people look at me like I am weird, like that is crazy. But I'm not the one that said it. I'm just repeating what Jesus said here in Matthew 5:39. But right there, in that one verse, Jesus is giving us a way out of the madness of violence and hatred. You see, the ultimate question, the central dilemma for the Christian believer is, how can we fight evil without becoming evil ourselves? Christian nonviolence offers the only solution to that problem. This third way of Jesus Christ is not a law, but a gift. Now, why do I call it the third way? Well, all through history, there have been two ways of dealing with conflict: fight or flight, hit back or run. Those are the options that we've been given all through history. But when Jesus tells us to turn the other cheek, he's giving us the third way. We're not backing down, but we're not running away either, and we're not hitting back. This third way has at its very heart the love of enemies. In Matthew 5:44 and 45, we read, "But I say to you," this is Jesus speaking, "but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust." See, what we're saying when we turn the other cheek is, you might think it's okay to act that way, but look here, you can strike me on the cheek. You have not accomplished the purpose that you set out with. I'm not fighting back, and when we're done here, we're going to do this thing God's way. It's like we're not going to get down in the mud with the other person. We're going to continue to do this God's way, no matter what. What Jesus here is giving us here is the nonviolent Christian weapon system, right? As I told you before, conflict arises. We mentioned it earlier already again, too. Like, I've got the fist, you've got the knife, you've got the gun, the other person's got the rocket launcher, then the tank, then the nuclear weapons come out, and we finally solved the differences between us, right? Because everything's turned to dust and no more problem. We're all, taken care of that way. And, of course, that's one way to do it. So what is the Christian weapon system? Prayer. Pray for those who persecute you. Taking the Bible literally, Jesus means what he says. Living our lives like Jesus Christ. Now, he did not smack down his enemies, right? He went to the cross for his enemies. It's Easter time. We know Good Friday is, I don't know why they call it good, but that's the time he went to the cross. And then Easter is the time he was resurrected and raised from the dead after 3 days. Excuse me. So he didn't deal with problems in that way. He didn't, call down the legions of angels on them that he could have called down on them. He chose a different way. Excuse me. He sacrificed himself for us, for all of us. When we live our lives like Jesus Christ, we have a third option. I will stand with the truth no matter what it may cost me and no matter what you do to me. And that's a different way. I was first convicted about the way of nonviolence. I was in Nicaragua after 12 years of civil war. It was kind of winding down when I was there, but there were still soldiers sweeping down through the villages and so on. And the people I was with were very courageous Christians. They would stand up to soldiers with guns and with no problem. And it was a way that I didn't know anything about. But I realized after 12 years of civil war, there were no schools, There were no doctors. There was a book circulating around called Where There Are No Doctors. That's what they used for medical care. There were no hospitals. They had just decimated their whole society after 12 years of civil war. And I came to realize that violence will do nothing but cause more problems in the world. We would just deteriorate in our, it'll destruct rather than construct. There's no constructive means by which we use violence. So when I came home, Miss Nancy and I started to learn everything we could about nonviolence. The people that I was with down there shared with me about the way of nonviolence that they were using, and like I said, they could stand up to soldiers with guns and so on. It really impressed me, let's put it that way. They were courageous people. And I came home, and Nancy and I started to study the way of nonviolence, and we just knew that there had to be a better way than what we have seen in the world around us. And so when we found it, we took a vow of nonviolence, and we've taken that very seriously. We're not perfect by any means, but almost immediately 3 things happened. First was I was able to give up the anger and the hypervigilance that I had kind of gotten when I was in the military. I just carried that around with me all the time and just watching all the time, like, where's the enemy? Where are they going to attack me from? Where are they coming from? And I just had that going on all the time, and just quickly I realized that all melted away, and I didn't have to feel like that all the time. And we became more creative in conflict resolution. I'm going to give you some examples in a minute. But just the way we approach things can cause violence to be less, less opportunity for violence even in our enemies. And then I think I mentioned last week, it gives us the opportunity to come early and stay late. Violence only gives us a certain number of options in a short amount of time. You either fight and win, or you fight and lose, right? There's your violent options. Or you can run away, like I said earlier. That's another out. But when we come to solve problems nonviolently with Christian love, we can begin very early on. We might meet someone that we just know we don't like this person, No matter what happens, we're just not going to like them. But we can begin to cultivate a friendship with that person even before there's a conflict. That person may be living a way that is contrary to the way of Christ and actually need to be confronted about something. When we confront them, if we've spent the time to develop a relationship with them, it's a lot less likely to deteriorate into shouting match or argument or anger or violence of any kind. And then the opportunity to stay late. Even if the person blows up at us, calls us names, smacks us on the cheek, we turn the other cheek, we're still working with that person. Look, that's not the way that's going to solve this issue for you. I'm still here. I guess if you took me out, I wouldn't be here. But we're still going to work on this problem. We're addressing the problem, not the person. We're not saying, oh, you're an evil person. We're saying this is an evil problem, that we're going to work on together. All right, Matthew 5:38-41. I'll read the whole thing this time. It puts it all together. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you. You do not turn away. Was that all of it? Yes. Okay, the point I was making here, I mentioned it last week too. Do not resist an evil person. How can this be? Of course, Jesus resisted evil everywhere he found it. So to say, do not resist an evil person seems to be going against everything that Jesus stood for. And what I found in researching the Greek word antistenai, or antistenai, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. But the word means war violence. And so when it talks about resisting, it's saying, don't use war violence to resist evil. It gives a whole different view of what is being said here. And then when we look at Romans 12:17, it says, do not repay evil for evil. Because why? That just doubles the amount of evil in the situation, right? If you're evil and I repay you with some evil, then we've got double dose of evil. Is that what we want? I think not. We also see this in 1 Thessalonians 5:15 and in 1 Peter 3:9. So when Jesus said turn the other cheek, he wasn't saying that you take a hit and that you don't do anything. He's saying that we're going to keep the conflict in the realm of Christian love, that turning the other cheek is doing something. It's hard for us to understand that. You see, again, when you hit me, I didn't fight back as you had expected, and I didn't back down. You didn't get what you wanted from me. You wanted me to back down or run away or fight back so that you would know how to deal with that, right? But there's situations where if we don't respond in that way, they don't quite know what's going on here. So you can say, well, take another shot because it didn't really work for you. I think that, if you think that's going to do you any good, just go ahead and hit me again, okay? You'd be surprised how quickly that diffuses a situation. And while you're hitting me, I'm going to tell you about the love of Jesus Christ. That is just such an opening. So again, Nancy and I have not learned how to live perfectly, non-violently. Of course, we're human like anyone else. But after we took this vow of non-violence, we decided to find out if we could live this out in our violent society. So we chose to begin to minister among the homeless and poor over in Durango, which led us into a lot of situations that required non-violence. Believe me, it's a violent setting that we put ourselves in. Christian love, Christian love had to be employed all the time. So we started meeting for church in the parks, out in Horse Gulch behind Sonic, back up in the mountains up in there. Wherever homeless people had gathered is where we set up our church basically and started ministering to people. And one incident at the soup kitchen in Durango that I had been ministering to a man, kind of a big biker dude, and for some reason one morning he just decided he'd had enough. He didn't want to hear about Jesus anymore. So he just walked in the door and just made a beeline over to me, and he took a swing. And, he didn't get a full-on hit, thank goodness. I'd probably still be out for the count. But he took a swing at me, and it hit me, grazed off my face. And instead of fighting back, instead of running away, I just started telling him how much Jesus Christ loves him and all of us, and that it didn't have to go this way, it didn't have to be like this, that we could work this out some other way. And I was surprised how quickly he broke down and was crying, and he was in my arms, and he was just, sorry, repentant that he had hit me for one, but he began to share a story that when he was a kid, he and his brother were running down a hill together, and they jumped over an irrigation ditch, and his brother won and was hit by a truck and killed. And his father said, killed the wrong brother. And he's been living with that ever since. And that anger and that violence is just breeding in him. And that was the first time that he had had a chance to share that with anyone. Because if I had hit back, we would have had a fight. If I'd have run away, I'd have never had a chance to share about Jesus Christ with him. This was the third way. This was the way of sharing without fighting back. Another one, kind of the same situation. I'd been sharing with a man about Jesus Christ, and he finally had enough, I guess, and he picked up one of these folding chairs like we have here, and he was going to wail on me with that. And I don't know, just the Holy Spirit convicted me to do something different again, rather than backing off and running away or slinging the chair over and trying to fight him or something. I just stepped up to him and hugged him and threw my arms around him and just started again saying, it doesn't have to be like this. Jesus Christ loves us all. He loves you. And the guy was trying to wail on me with the chair, but I was too close to him, right? I was hugging him. What could he do? He couldn't hit me. And finally he just, kind of the same thing. He just, it pacified him. It made him gentle then because he didn't know quite what to do. I think we found that violence is very short amount of time. Anger doesn't last very long. Someone gets anger and they blow themselves out, and the next thing you know, they're ready to reconcile, if we are. Finally, and we're going to talk some more about this next week, even greater things that Nancy and I have seen. She stood up to a guy with a gun. We're going to talk about that next week. But another incident was at the library right here in town. A guy, I was coming toward the front door of the library from the parking lot, and a guy was just yelling and threatening his girlfriend right in front of the library. And I just went over to him, and it kind of surprised him, and he said, this is none of your business, old man, And I said, you made it my business by being out here screaming and swearing in this parking lot, and so I can't just pass by. And he didn't quite know what to make of that. And to make a long story short, it diffused the situation. I told the young lady that she didn't have to leave with him, that she could make a different choice here. But again, he kind of blew himself out quickly because his anger dissipated. He didn't know. He started calling me names, and since I didn't respond in the way that he expected, it had a different outcome than it might have ordinarily. So next week, we're going to continue on with this theme. It'll be the last week for this. But again, we've seen some pretty amazing things by using the way of Christian love and nonviolence as opposed to the Bible.